You are watching Co-op for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois, September 29th, Thursday, around 11 p.m., 2022. I was just laughing at Jonathan's comment in the channel. He asks, "What's the turned font always so large and red, feeling a bit nervous?" Okay, so we've got a bit to talk about before we get started playing our turn 12 of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. One of the things I've been doing for the last week is going on a bit of a marathon coding OBS plugins, and one of the things I did was do some substantial changes to the text plugin for OBS. Normally my title screens are like 4 different lines of text. It's a bit of a pain to switch them up. So I modified the OBS plugin to let me do a single line of text and change the line spacing and sizes and colors. That'll be open sourced soon. The other thing I changed, so I changed a bit of things in our previous stream that we looked at, in addition to my OBS plugin that zooms around, that does the auto zoom and crop. And when we played Sherlock Holmes West End Adventures case, we tried that out, and we tried that out with this new monitor I have behind the camera using a split screen so that it was large enough that I could read facing forward off the screen. But one of the complaints that was made was that it's weird because I'm looking off screen reading, but it's a split screen, which it is now, just like it is now. I'm reading the comments now. But before, I was looking off in the wrong direction, and that's just an artifact of reading from a monitor behind the camera. No matter what side of the split screen the text is on, it's always going to look to you like I'm looking off in this direction when the text is to the other side of me. So one of the other OBS plugins I just finished was a plugin that switches the preview of where the split screen is. So for me, the text now is on the left hand of the screen, so I'm reading it now. Matt says hi everyone. Jonathan says hi Matt. Okay, so I'm looking at the split screen of the text. Hopefully you should see the text on the right hand side of your screen, and it should look like I'm looking in that direction now. Is that correct? It's hard for me to test it. It only happens when it's streaming. That's what the plugin does. Only when you start streaming does it flip the screen. Okay, so hopefully that looks a little better. A little less disconcerting that I'm looking off in the wrong direction. It still doesn't look perfect when I'm reading from the screen, but I think all things considered, this is as good as we're going to get it, and it will keep the audio better. All right, so that's an update on my OBS work in the last week. If those will all be open sourced before the end of the year. If you have any other ideas, requests for OBS, OBS is open broadcasting software system. That's what I use to do the live streaming. If anyone's interested in starting a YouTube channel, that's what you'd probably use. Okay, anything else we need to catch up on? The channel can tell me what they've been working on. I want to tell you a very quick story related to the other thing that I've been doing the last couple of days, is preparing for a yard sale this weekend, tomorrow and Saturday. And the story I want to tell you is when we do these yard sales, we do them mostly for fun. It's Rebecca, one of my good friends here, is the real mastermind behind it. but we just hang out and talk to people, and sometimes we play games with people. I have these, there's cards that ask questions, and one of the things that has always stuck in my mind was one of the early yard sales we had. I put out some of my records. I had hundreds and hundreds of records over the years, and I put out some of the ones I don't listen to too much anymore, but some records that I was, very fond of. And had some good conversations with the little old man who lived down the block, talking about John Coltrane and Chet Baker and all that. And one of the things that always stuck with me was when this record store owner showed up early, found the stack of the most valuable records, bought them, didn't want to talk about them at all, just wanted to buy them to resell them. And then there went 25% of my records. And all of the fun of selling those records was gone. So what I wanted to show you is I have no more records to sell. The couple hundred I'm keeping, I'm never letting go. But what I wanted to show you was the sign for board games, for these board games. Okay, do you see that? Okay, so this is a special table of board games that we've played on the channel. I'm keeping a lot of the ones that are my favorites, so these are not much my favorites. But Jonathan, you remember Dune, House Secrets? This is the game Jonathan and I played together back in the old days. So each of these games are limit 1 per customer, so that they're forced to talk to me about them, and no one can just buy a bunch. So that will force them to talk to me about board games. And I'm sure they will wonder what is wrong with me. All right. Anything else we need to talk about? You'll notice today that we're only playing the Sherlock Holmes play-by-mail, Murders by Mail Turn 12. We're not playing the LA Noire case later this evening. And the reason for that is that it hasn't arrived yet, the reply. This one arrived a couple days ago. LA Noire still hasn't arrived. Now, why hasn't the LA Noire case arrived? Well, it hasn't arrived because I got an email from them. And I guess I won't go into it. We'll save that for the suspense of when we play that game. It's nothing that exciting, but that's why we're not playing it later tonight. We'll save that story for when we actually play it. All right, anything else to talk about? I've missed playing. Oh, it's been like 8 or 9 days. This is my happy place now, this channel. So I'm hoping that October will actually be several times per week. We'll actually play more than usual. We'll try to do some scary games. I ordered the Hunt a Killer Blair Witch season and a couple others. I think we'll start going through some of these play-by-mail subscription games. It's hard to find honest reviews of these games. It seems to me that most of the reviews of these games are websites that are getting paid by these companies to promote them or getting all the games free. But I did start a thread on the Co-op for Two Guild on Board Game Geek that you can find a link to in the YouTube community tab on YouTube. And I made a link to some sites that seem to have reasonable reviews of some of them. If you want to help pick out some scary games to play in October, you can post on that thread and we'll get some of those played. Okay, so let's get to our game here. Jonathan says, if you don't think you want to play House Secrets at all, it might be worth looking back at the old stream. Oh, Jonathan is talking to someone else. Okay, so let's get started. Let's remind ourselves where we left off. We actually, after having nothing to do for a while, we actually finally stumbled upon Edward's relatives that are mentioned in the paper, mentioned somewhere else, and then we eventually tracked down to his mentor, who actually gave us some great information last turn and revealed This is Samuel Doherty. So last turn we learned that his mentor, Professor Doherty, found him in Australia during a dig. And actually, he was a prisoner with a different name, but they changed his name because people wouldn't respect him if they didn't. So his real name was Egerton or Edgerton, and he was a crook. And now this explains why he actually was continuing with his criminal business here in England, but also gave us his real name so we could look it up in the directory, which we did. We found 2 Egertons. We think that's probably the brother and maybe the mother. So that's exciting that we're going to be able to talk to them. Although I think we're all in agreement that we think we understand this case and the side case completely. And we're probably ready to solve it, but we're not ready to end the game. However, we can open that black envelope whenever we're ready. We also learned about, surprisingly, Edwards, the victims, had a girlfriend, Angie, who worked in the theater, the Princess Theater, and we sent Wiggins there because Wiggins turned out to be an actor in Sherlock Holmes lore eventually. So that was Anna who remembered that we should send Wiggins there. So actually, we've got some kind of exciting stuff to read, and let's get to it. If no one else has anything else they want to add, let me know if there are delays and hiccups in the stream, because with all these new plugins, it's possible that they may not be as optimized as they could be. All right, let's recall where we went here. I don't really have these. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So Watson went to Mary Egerton in the directory just listed as M. Egerton. Wiggins went to the Princess Theater to meet the girlfriend. And Hudson visited Russell Egerton, possibly the brother. All right, let's see what we've got here. Here's Watson visiting Mary Egerton. Mary Egerton lives in a block of flats that are filthy and overcrowded. It was the sort of neighborhood in which disease will spread rapidly and without mercy. In contrast, Miss Egerton's flat was neat and well kept with old but meticulously polished furniture. Her walls were adorned with pictures of Warren Edwards in far-flung places around the globe. Here with a tribesman in South Africa, there holding a koala in Australia, and finally posing next to a cowboy somewhere in the American West. When I introduced myself and explained my association with you, Holmes, Mrs. Egerton instantly invited me in and brewed a cup of tea. "Oh, I do hope you catch the rotten blighter that did in my poor Warren," she said with feeling. "It would do this mother's heart good to see that bugger swing." "Well, we're doing everything we can to uncover the murderer, I assure you. Whatever you can tell me about Warren and his background would be of assistance. You never know the source of the crucial clue." "He were always a good lad, my Warren. It were hard raising up 2 boys on me own after their father, may God rot his soul, ran off when they were but small. Russell, the older one, was always into trouble, and I blame him for corrupting my poor sweet Warren. It were Russell got them into running cons, it were, though I suppose it's hard to blame a lad for trying to make some money in this wicked old world. With me barely able to support them, taking in washing and piecework." Piecework is a very cool term that doesn't get used anymore in modern day, but I believe it's when the people would get paid by the piece, sewing things or putting together things, and they would work in a factory and get paid by the piece. I think that's piecework. Okay, so Watson says, "I know that Warren was transported to Australia for fraud. Was Russell sent as well?" "No, he were sent to Millbank prison instead. He's got a bum leg from a fall when he were a boy, so he couldn't do hard labor. So he stayed in London where I could visit him, though I rarely did. And my poor sweet angel got sent halfway around the world where I couldn't even write to him. But he came back, a self-made man, he did. A real scientist, just like he was born a lord. He had to change his name, mind you, but he never forgot his old mum. Used to come by for tea regular like, and always had a bit of spare cash to help me make ends meet. When was the last time you saw him? Just a week before he died. He was in a right state. He'd promised to bring round some actress that he'd been seeing. But he said she'd thrown him over because he was short on money. I forgot her name, but she played Ophelia at the Princess Theater. I went to see her on the sly, and she was a lovely slip of a girl. I only wish I could have had her as a daughter-in-law. I always wanted to have a daughter to gossip with, but it's all ruined now, and I despair that Russell will ever marry. Oh, my poor innocent Warren, God took you too soon. At this point, she broke into sobs, and despite my best efforts at comforting her, she was unable to speak coherently again. Shortly after, I took my leave. Okay, so more mention of the girlfriend. We already are visiting her. But it is interesting that she blames Russell. Is this a possible alternate suspect for us? And Russell was at Millbank Prison. Did we go to Millbank Prison for another reason, or am I misremembering that? Because it seems like maybe we got a new place to go. Millbank Prison, unless we already went there for some other reason. I have a faint memory, but I think we went to Millbank in Sherlock Holmes West End Adventures is what I think, and I don't think we went to Millbank Prison in this game. Okay, so she tells us a little bit more about the bad brother Russell, who has a limp. He has a bum leg from when he had a fall. I mean, Russell is a suspect just because he's a bad influence, but I guess we have no indication that the brothers had bad relationships, so we don't really suspect him. But now what's nice about this is we are getting a picture of Warren as kind of a good guy. Like, yeah, he was running some scams. Maybe. We don't know that they were scams. We know he was sued a couple times. And, you know, he's got a bad history, but we're not actually sure they're scams, are we? People didn't make money, but lots of people had failed ventures in these days. Are we sure that it's a scam? That his mines were scams? All right, let's see what Wiggins. Well, let's visit Russell, then we'll go back to the girlfriend. All right, so here's Russell. Russell Egerton lives off London Road, just south of St. George's Circus, in a small flat that smelled of stale beer and rotten cheese. When he opened the door, I could see heaps of rubbish and a pile of violin cases against the wall. He was quite rude at first and didn't budge even when I mentioned your name, Sherlock. He insisted that in order to answer my questions, I would have to buy him a few pints at the pub around the corner. I drank a rather tepid tea. "He were a good lad, my brother Warren," he said, once he'd had half a pint of bitter. "Reliable in a pinch and not one to blab to the coppers, if we got picked up. Not that we got picked up a lot, even in the early days. Warren, he were a rum hand at the confidence game, calm as you like and confident as a lord. He could talk an old codger out of his trousers as easy as kiss my hand. And he got sent away and it all went to hell. I know he got sent to Australia. Why didn't you?" Oh, when I were a young lad, I took it into my head to steal a hansom cab. Fell off the driver's seat and broke my leg. Never healed up proper, so I was no use to the overseers in Australia. Almost wish I had gone, 'cause Warren, he came back a changed man. All jumped up and fancified like he were born noble. Learned to be a scientist, changed his name, put one over on everyone. Wanted to forget who he were and where he came from, but I couldn't let him forget entire. Not while I were still living hand to mouth, not while his new friends didn't know his real name. Oh dear, you mean you blackmailed your own brother? I said. Now that's an ugly word, and here I thought we were friends. No, it were out of the goodness of his heart and his sense of brotherly responsibility that he would drop by and toss a bit of coin my way. He had plenty to spare, I can tell you. He may have been a real scientist, I'm sure I can't say, but he never stopped being a confidence man. All those expeditions he took all over the world, he took in investments from his high and mighty new friends. Not one of those investments ever paid out. Diamond mines and dinosaur bones, it were all just a bait on the hook. Just kills me that he wouldn't let me in on the game. Sounds to me like you were jealous of him. Some would say that could be a motive for murder. And kill the goose that lays the golden eggs? Not on your life. Besides, he were my brother. I wouldn't have harmed a hair on his head. Of course not. Didn't I read somewhere that your Sherlock Holmes plays the fiddle? I got a genuine Guarnerius back in me flat I can give you a great deal on. Thank you, but no. Mr. Holmes is quite happy with his current violin. Speaking of your violin, Sherlock, I finally made it to a music store to pick up more rosin for the bow. Perhaps some music would help you while away the hours of your convalescence. Oh, this was Miss Hudson's talking. I was reading it as Wiggins. Okay, so the brother makes a good case. He's not going to kill the golden goose, and he's not really angry at him. He just wants some of that money. He's putting a little pressure on him to kick back, but it sounds like our guy Warren was kicking back money to his relatives. So it's pretty convincing that he wouldn't kill his brother. I see, that's why she drank tea. Somehow I was thinking we were reading Wiggins because I skipped over Wiggins. So she has to go drink tea while this guy gets drunk. All right. And he does tell us the answer to the question I had before, which is, it's pretty convincing now that Warren Edwards was running these fraudulent scams. Okay, here we go. This is Wiggins this time. The Princess Theater is not set in with all the fancy theaters in the West End. Instead, it's in a poorer neighborhood just on the east side of Elephant and Castle. But they're not just doing farces and dog and pony shows for all of that. The walls outside the door were plastered with playbills for Hamlet, Hedda Gabler, and Dr. Faustus. In all of them, the leading lady seemed to be Miss Angela Sedgwick. I don't put much store by a newspaper review. I'd rather know what me best bloke thought of a play, but if the quote were to be believed, her Hedda Gabler was the toast of London. It was mid-afternoon, so the theater wasn't open for the show yet, but the outer doors were unlocked. I pushed through and into the lobby. The place was dingy and the carpet worn through in places. It seemed like their finances might have been helped by running a farce or two instead of all those highbrow plays. "Hello," I cried. "Anyone home?" After a minute or so, a portly man with long side whiskers came out from the theater. He introduced himself as Tony, the stage manager. "Show's not till 7, sir, but I can sell you a ticket now if you'd like." "I'm not here to see the show, mate. I'm looking into the murder of Warren Edwards on behalf of Sherlock Holmes." He gave an awful scowl when I mentioned Edwards' name. I read in the paper about him getting his head stove in. Can't say I'm sorry to see the end of him. Sounds like you knew him then. Sure, a real patron of the arts, him. He was sweet on our Angie. She stepped out with him a few times, but it didn't last long. I don't know what passed between them, but I get the impression he didn't treat her well. He took to hanging around the stage door after performances. Angie hated it. She made me throw him out a few times before he stopped coming around. When was the last time you saw him? A bit more than 2 weeks ago, I'd say. He was in his cups. And all promises, he was drunk. And all promises and big talk about how he'd come back from America rich as Solomon and then he'd show us all. In the end, he begged me to let him see Angie, but I weren't having none of it. I thumped him on the ear and sent him on his way. Too right, Governor. Sounds like no more than he deserved. Is Miss Sedgwick about? Can I talk to her? No, she'll be at home. She keeps a flat with some of the other actors off Tabard Street. Don't you keep her up past curtain, though, or you'll have to answer to me. I promised I wouldn't and was shortly on my way. Okay, so Sedgwick, the girlfriend, broke up with him, doesn't want to see him. He comes back, he says he's rich. He's going to show us all. And then we've got the address. We're told Angie's in her apartment. So let's see if we can find her. She keeps a flat with some of the other actors on Tabard. So we could try to look her up, or we could try to look an apartment building up. Let's see if we can't find Sedgwick. So there's Sedgwick, SE39. Angie is likely to be. So SE39 is a Sedgwick. So we could go talk to her and find out what her story is. It doesn't sound like it's related to our case, but she might have he might have confided some stuff in her. I wonder if we could also find, I could have found that places if we went to apartments or hotels. Would have been more interesting if she wasn't look-upable because she wasn't of high enough status, but you could find her business, her apartment building. Okay. So yeah, we're getting a fuller picture of our victim, but it's come after we've basically think we've solved the case. So those are our 3 things. We got the address of Angie, who we probably want to talk to for completeness sake. We talked to the brother and the mother. They both... The brother is very convincing that he's not involved in the murder, to me at least. The mother told us that the brother was in Millbank prison, which is tempting to want to visit, but I'm not sure if you pressed me how I would say that was likely to be relevant. I mean, what's the best case is we hear a little bit about how the brother was in prison, whether he was a violent man. So if we look at our notes here, let's see if we can do this. Let's go to our notes here. Okay, so Angie Sedgwick is SE39. Okay, and then we've also got Russell Egerton was at Millbank prison. I'm gonna look that up so we can know where that is if we want to visit it. What do you think that's under? Is there a special prisons? Police station. Maybe we'll just look it up. There's a military prison, and then that's interesting that this is Milbank isn't listed as its own entry. It's just listed as military prison. SE27 looks like maybe. 27 question mark. Okay. So these are new. So the other leads, so we've been to the next of kin now, we've been to these two. So we still have some informants we haven't been to. We still have some rooms in Burlington House we haven't been to. We definitely want to go visit Angie. So I suggest we send Wiggins to Angie, the actress. I mean, it's good for Wiggins, too, to meet these actors and actresses. Maybe this is how he got into acting. As for the other two places we go, however, I'm not sure. Let's look at what informants we have left. Okay, so as far as informants we have left, I've got to get used to this new layout I've got here. As far as informants we have left, we haven't been to Archive of Deaths and Marriages, Old Bailey, Criminal Cases. We haven't been to Porky. We have no real reason to go to any of those. We haven't been to Mycroft Home at the Diogenes Club. Doesn't seem like he should be involved in this case. And then there's a couple newspapers we haven't been to in the British Museum. None of those are all that appealing in terms of seeming like they're related to our case. We've got a couple more leads that we didn't follow that should be in our notes, but now I'm not sure. One of them was the guy who hired us, John Lawson, said he went to the bank. We know he's an opium addict. So, but he did tell us what bank he went to. That seems like we do not need to go there, but we could if we wanted to be real completionists. All right, let's catch up on the chat and see where people want to go. John says maybe the British Museum would give us more confirming our victim as a confidence man. Boy, it does not seem like we really need more confirmation there. Let me mark this turn, but I'll tell you where we could go. Let's look at our Burlington House thing again. So I want to talk about this for a second because there's something a little odd about this. So the Burlington House has a main address, Northwest 13, that we've never been to. That's a little odd. But there are also rooms in here we haven't been to. We haven't been to the sitting room. If you'll remember, that was the last room that he was hanging out in before he went downstairs, I believe we're told. And did we also not go to the Antiquities President? It seems to me like these are kind of fun places we should go. We're trying to catch sight of who we think committed the murder, which is Dawson, and he worked in this place. So it seems to me, since we've lost track of him, we should be visiting these places to see if he was seen in any of them. So I'm thinking we should go to the sitting room, president's office, maybe even antiquities president, maybe even geology guy. Let's see. The president's right next to where all this happened. He may have heard something. So I think that's a reason to go to B1. The sitting room is where they were hanging out before he went downstairs. That's a big reason to go there. Maybe someone saw Richard Lawson there. So B1 and B2 are both very appealing to me. Also, this general location, I'm sort of curious what we would see when we go there. Like how is an entry different? The channel is saying, oh, museum might have information about dinosaur bones. All right, Jonathan says, let's try the sitting room. Okay, who do you want to send there? Watson or Hudson? Shall we try my little cubes? Let's see. President's office or sitting room? All right, so we're gonna go to the sitting room, B2. Who should we send? Watson. Okay, let's do it. Let's make our entries here. Cubes seem to be working. Okay, so we're gonna send Watson to the sitting room, which is B2. Makes sense for Watson to be in Burlington House. We're going to send Wiggins to Southeast 39 to see Angie Sedgwick, the slip of an actress. Actress, we'll call her the ex-girlfriend. And now Miss Hudson, where do you want to send her? Yes, it has been Watson visiting the Burlington House places, so it makes sense that he would go to one more, to the sitting room. All right. Southeast 39 was Wiggins, who's green. Let me put his thing on the map, and then you guys just have to decide where you want to send Hudson. Okay, Southeast 39 looks like right here. Okay, that's where the actress lives with her other actors. Now, where do we send Hudson? We could send Hudson. I think it makes sense for Watson to stay in the Burlington House. Okay, so we could send Hudson to the military prison, or we could send her to one of our informants, one of the newspapers, or the museum to learn about dinosaur bones. It's odd that we don't, it's weird that the informants so far have not been, we're not all that excited about, but it seems like we should. Now think about our culprit. That should be our focus, right? We know he's a chemist. We know he fell on hard times. We know he sued our guy. He almost got arrested because he made such a big fuss. So getting more information about him would be useful. It does seem like maybe the British Museum Library would be the place to go. Maybe we would learn about iodine, or remember our guy's a chemist. He also goes to visit his mother in the country, so you might imagine births, deaths, and marriages. It's possible we could get information about the address of Richard Lawson's mother here at Somerset House. That's kind of intriguing. Mycroft always has something useful, if enigmatic to say. Jonathan's Museum. Okay, museum or Somerset House? Which one of the two? All right, let's go to the museum. We're sending Hudson. Although, general knowledge and research. I'm just trying to think, what would Hudson be better at? Would she be better at records of births and deaths? I think we should send Hudson to Somerset House. I've changed my mind. We'll send Watson to the museum later if we wanted to. I think we send Hudson to Somerset House, although I suspect she'll just come up with alternate ways to find relatives of our victim. But if she can find out Lawson's information, that would be huge. So I think WC29. I'm just trying to think, what's the most likely place that we would get information on our suspect? And I think Somerset House is it. So WC29. We're going to go to Somerset House. Okay, WC29, Somerset House. Somerset. Births, deaths, etc. Informant. Okay, let's put those entries in. Anna says, I don't think we could go outside London after the mother, I think. It's true. First of all, did we know that he said he goes out of town for the mother or just to visit the mother? Second of all, he could be lying about where he's going. Maybe we'll find records that his mother is dead or something. It's unlikely, but let's try to enter our stuff now. Okay, Watson, we said he's going to B2. Wiggins is going as SE39 to get a date with the actress. And Hudson is going to WC29 to look up births and deaths. And here we go. Send move. And there you go. Done and done. And maybe we'll put this WC29 on the map in yellow. Even though when it's an informant, it's not so important that we keep track of where it is on the map. But since it's right here, we might as well. Somerset House. All right. Anything else to talk about before we end this? Soon we're going to open these black envelopes. But I guess while we're still following these leads, while we still got reasonable leads, I think maybe we'll put off opening the black envelopes. Jonathan says, "Do we want to look at it yet?" I think what we got to do is this has got to be painful that we're drawing it out so much. But I think logically what we're going to do is we're going to wait until we get like a set of boring replies. Like when we've have nothing more interesting to go to except for informants or something, then we'll open it. But we have to stretch it out a little bit more. All right. But yeah, it doesn't seem like there's all that much more to discover. We're just getting some background information on our victim. All right. Well, let's end it there. Hopefully we'll play the LA Noire case soon. early next week, I'm hoping. But we're going to be unsynchronized between these two unless we can get back on track. And you'll have to stay tuned for that session to find out about the mystery of why we've got a late reply. And with that, I'll sign off. But it's very likely that next week we'll meet twice. We'll play the LA Noir, but we'll also play a nice long 6 or 7 hour session. Either another West End Adventures case, which the last one was quite good, or we'll play one of these new cold case games I've got. I got a couple new ones. Murder of a Marine Biologist. The Cryptic Killers is that series. The Cold Case Investigation Unit Case 4 is due to arrive sometime in the next week or two. And then we've got the Creepy Games Blair Witch Project and some others coming up. So we've got lots to play in October. Jonathan wonders, will Jesse gain any subscribers from the yard sale? When I started this channel with Greg, here's the last little story I'll close on. When I started the channel with Greg, we were discussing what should we name the channel. And I suggested Co-op for Two. And Greg said basically, I don't like it, but it has one advantage. It makes clear right up front that new people can't come and join and try to ask to play with us and get on the channel. And Greg's main concern was stalkers and crazy people. So it's possible that the yard sale will if it creates new subscribers, it will create the scary kind of stalker subscribers that I've never met in my life. So hopefully that won't happen. I have faith in humankind that we won't get any. I think people just, you need a little bit of weirdness and strangeness in the world. So I welcome it. All right, guys, let's sign off. I'll see you next time. Bye.